Okay, and welcome to this week. This week I'm trying something different. I think I mentioned I wasn't going to do any collage in here, but what I'm going to be doing in here is I've got this fabric, and it's a kind of stiff fabric, but it's thin, and I wanted to add it to this book. I wanted to have a piece of fabric in the book, so I thought, why not? So what I'm adding to the page is just Elmer's glue, and I'm using an incredibly small brush again. And one of the reasons why I do this is it helps you to, it's just one of the things that helps you to really just kind of not rush into it, or not to take it. It's about taking your time. And so with a small brush you're forced to, because there's only so much glue you can add. So I've added the glue to the page, and this is the fabric that I'd got. It was I think it was 4 pieces for like £10 in Brixton Market, and it's kind of like a African inspired print. And so I'm literally just gonna add it to the page. And then you're going to have to let it dry, and I let it naturally dry, so I'll be working on something else while that's doing. I've got another piece here that just fits, so I'm going to add that. So again, just a quick and easy tip: you don't just have to collage paper into your books, you can use fabric. And what I would normally do, depending on the fabric, is then add gesso to it, because gesso then adds a tooth. So it's just like if you think of your canvas when you're doing a painting, your canvas. It's like a cotton fabric, I guess, and that fits just perfectly. So you would add gesso. So I might add, I'm going to wait until it dries, because it's the type of fabric that's quite absorbent, and now I've got the layer underneath of the glue. I'd watered it down a little bit. It should take colour quite well. I'm just going to add a little bit to this corner here. Yeah, and another thing that I would use is, this is just a card, and just to, flatten it all down, make sure. But this kind of fabric, I've never seen this kind of fabric before. It's the feel of it. It's like, I don't know, it's like, so if you've come across the African fabrics and the waxed ones, so it's a version of that, but not so heavily, it's not got that heavy feel to it, but it's got the stiffness to it, and I like it. And maybe another experiment I'd like to do, and we're just doing it now, I'm just going to take a piece off it. So for this week, I guess what you could do is, just experiment with fabrics. So I'm going to do 2 experiments. So with one, I've got this, I'm going to create a journal page out of this. So you could use clear gesso to provide that tooth, unless it's the type of fabric you use has that kind of tooth. In the past I've used like jeans material. I haven't got any fabric books, but I'll leave a link to fabric books that I've made in the past, and you can see how I've used, if you use gesso on it, it then becomes like another canvas that you can paint on. I've used black coloured fabric, and yeah, the paint is still vibrant once you've put that layer of gesso on it. But I just wanted to see what I've got some art bars here, and they're worse for wear because they have been in a plastic container, and then when the sun comes in to my studio, it's been making them soft, but not so soft that they break. And these are the Carrot Aquarelle. So I'm just gonna add some to this fabric just to see what. So it's a water soluble crayon, and it looks like, see, that what I was talking about was how absorbent it can be. So it's absorbing the water, and you don't want it to absorb that much water, so that's why you would put the gesso on it. So that's just directly onto the fabric, which, you know, you can dye fabric. I've got some dyes, actually, yeah, I've got some dyes here in a bottle. This is yellow. Ooh! So you can use the dyes as a paint. You can water them down a bit if you want. And, you know, add it to the canvas. I've got some inks here as well. Can I get into that? Oh yeah. Okay, let me just do a little bit here. Ooh. Now this in the bottle looks blue. It's probably because I've got the yellow on. So again, you know, it's to take your book and experiment as you're, you know, spending time. Let's go in. Let's go in. There we go. See if we can get this colour. Yeah, there we go. So again, it depends what you want to do with the fabric that you've got. If you don't, you know, obviously you may not have fabric like this, so you'd want to gesso first and then add colour, and maybe just to have, let me see what I've got here, and you can, again, this is you know, you just nipped into the studio and I happen to be doing this particular activity. I'm looking for my palette. There it is. Now this is clear gesso. I have to get some more gesso because my other gesso, the ants decided to have a swim in there, so it's full of ants just floating on the top. Probably what I'll do, I don't know whether this sounds yucky, probably what I'll do is just scrape off the ants and then I'll be able to use it. Because they didn't go underneath, they're just floating on top, so I can just take off that top layer. Okay, so this is clear gesso, so it's not going to actually change the colouring of this, but what it will make it easier to do is be able to write on it. So, or unless you're using like one of those laundry pens that can write on anything, or a permanent marker. But yeah, this is one of the things that you can do with different types of material, and you can add it to your journal. And for me, I didn't really want this journal to be any chunkier than it is. I like how it is now, so I didn't want to add, I like how it is now, so I didn't want to add, you know, too many papers to it. There's quite a few papers that I started out with when I was making it. So so yeah, this is something that you can do and work with it. I'll show you last week's page. last week's page is here, and I'll give you a little view of that. I have to come out a bit. Oh, no, that's going the wrong way. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is last week's page, and I had, just be careful of this, I had kind of done layers. I've used my favourite supplies, which are the Neo colours, water soluble wax. Is that how they describe it? Let me just get the Neo colour water soluble wax pastel. There, I've got my little jar of them, and they're my favourite supplies. One of my favourite, because the Inktense will say to you, oh, but she said Inktense is my favourite, and they are. I've got so many different favourites. Anyway, so I just layered. I was just playing. Yeah, allowed myself to play on the page, and I wasn't doing anything elaborate. It was just reintroducing myself to the colour, and I did the colour lines. Yeah, so then I went on and created a simple image here, and I was talking about, you know, us being compassionate with ourselves. And if you listen to the podcast for the week, for last week, then you will hear me also talk about it on there. And so then I just did some journaling, and then on this page I had some, it was like brown paper, and I've got some here, and I think it was just like tissue paper. And what I liked, again, the layers I'd written on the page, and I didn't want to do anything again too elaborate, so I just covered the page and I left it raw. As I'd torn it, that's how I'd left it around the edges, and I actually quite like that effect. And that was it for me in terms of doing that page. So I then wrote about what the word means to me, and I've now also got the recording as well that I can re-listen to. I can read this again, especially if it's you know, over the week you want to kind of just ponder on those words and think about what it means to you. How can you be more compassionate to yourself? You know, if we're going to show compassion to other people, we have to start at home first with ourselves and look at how we're treating ourselves, look at how we're showing up for ourselves. Okay, yeah, so that was that page. I just thought I'd share that with you. So now we're going to go on to this page and the word for this week. Okay, 3, 2, 1, back in the room. Okay, so the word for today is sensuous and senses, and the overall word for the month is love. So listen to the podcast. In the podcast I speak about the way that we use our senses, and the fabric actually has without me kind of really pondering on it, has kind of captured a couple of the, because I focus on the word senses, and when we think about the senses and how we use each of them, so our sight, our smell, sense of smell, sense of taste, touch, and was it the sight? See, here, ears, here, sense, smell, taste, touch, and then the fifth sense or the sixth sense, and so for me the use of texture is using the senses. So it's not only the texture that you can see, but then when you feel it, like feeling this, for me it's got a certain type of texture. And as I was saying to you before, the fabric itself is quite firm, yet it's thin. It's if you were to describe it in paper terms, in GSM, I would have said it's about, like, say 120, but it's It's got a suppleness to it. Even thinking about last week's word, not last week's word, but the texture I used for last week's word, the tissue paper, it's very thin, very light. And again, for you to think about what that word means for you, when you think about your senses, and how if you lost one of the senses, it could be heightened. Let me kind of just start adding some colour to this. I think I'm going to use some colour, and we can still talk. Yeah, but so these are just, again, watercolour crayons that I'm going to be using. I haven't used, again, these for quite a long time. I think these are what is it, Sargent watercolour crayons. So I'm going to add some clear gesso to this. So yeah, when you think about, I'm just going to add a thin layer of it, and then it will dry quite quickly. So when you think about the senses, yeah, you know, if one was diminished, when we think about people who lose their sight, their hearing then becomes more acute. And you know, they can hear things more, whispers, they can hear, you know, or if you'd lost your hearing, then those people who can lip read, and their, you know, the visual cues that they have to be more aware of, their ability to do that heightens. And so think about what that actually means for you. Let's have this colour here. And you know, the senses that you use or that are underused, and how maybe in your creative activity, like for me, texture is really important. So I use texture a lot in my work. I do a lot of sculpture work as well, and fabric, and having the different textures, again, as I say, is really important. Not only the end result, when I'm creating a particular piece, I'm not thinking, well, it's going to look like this. More often than not, it's about how am I feeling as I'm doing it, and how is the process making me feel, rather than, you know, yeah, I've got to make a figure of a woman or whatever it is. And that's something that I touch on in my arts and wellness episodes, so I hope, you know, you do come on and listen to those. And it's you know, I'll be having people on who are talking about their particular art forms and how they feel it either impacts generally on their own health and well-being, or how people who respond to their work, how it impacts on them. And it's really important. So yeah, when I think about the sense of the touch, and the fact that, you know, there are some people who, like, if you know, you take the elderly who are isolated, so, you know, or who live on their own and who are isolated, and they may only see the postman, but that sense, I don't know why I started with that, but we know that the sense, the touch is really important, and being affectionate, or, you know, having a hug, or, you know, when you meet somebody for the first time, you usually shake your hand. That's the kind of thing that people do generally, or or go in for a hug. I think it's only when you know them that you go in for a hug. Or you meet people. I had this one incident. Well, it wasn't an incident actually. I had met this person, and then I went to a space where they were, and two people came in, who obviously knew him, and so gave him a hug. And then I felt, oh, should I give him a hug as well? And I was like, no, you don't know him. So, you've met him before, and yes, you've spoken to him, but I don't think it wasn't like, I felt this burning desire that, it's the way that I needed to greet him. But it was just like, it was funny that I kind of thought about it first, and it was just like, no, I don't need to do that. It's not everybody that, again, we talk about, or I talk about in one of my posts, where we look at restoration, and we will be looking at that at another time, and how you set up boundaries for yourself, because it's not everybody that you let into your space, because not everybody is there because they're there for your good. Some people overstep the boundaries, and I know that's not what we're talking about today. But again, for senses, these senses, sensuous, you think about how you would respond with that particular the sense of smell, how you respond to certain situations. So and what that means for you. I'm liking this page already, and it's just like I've just been adding colour. And again, that's another way that you can work. Just don't, think about, I've got to produce this particular thing. I never think that. I just think, what do I feel like doing? And if I'm not sure, I just do, one of the easiest things for me is just laying down colour, because it's, again, it's not, you're not committing to anything. You're just, as I say, reintroducing yourself to the particular supply, especially if you haven't used it for a long time. You just really need to, you don't want to set yourself up for, oh, it should have looked this way because I should be able to do this, and it's like, no, it's just, you're just playing. It's not, as I say, you're not committing to anything. I'm not committing to anything in this journal. Whether I did writing on this or not, it would still be fine. I might not necessarily be ready to actually work on this page, and that's the other thing you've got to think about. Sometimes you do a page and you just can't, you say to yourself, oh, it's just not working. And I think what it really is you're just not ready for it. It's not working, so come back, leave it and go on and do something else. You shouldn't feel that you can't do that even in your own journal. So this is again quite a meditative activity, because it just allows you to, you're quieting the mind, and you're not really focusing on anything in particular, or try and get yourself to that point where it's just, I'm just adding green right now, and I'm just smushing it, if that's a word, smushing it around the page and blending the areas in. Nothing is pressing, nothing is, like, there's nothing to think about in terms of worry. This is your time really just to, allow yourself to do what you're doing. Allow yourself to play and add the colours. Have a sip of your tea. the only thought I just had there was, okay, I've allowed my tea to go cold, but I want to add some red to the page. So I'm just going to do that down here. I'm going to try even, you know, I've wet the end, because that's another way that you can use it. You can apply them directly, like so. You can use a brush and then apply it, or you can put, you know, water on it and then apply it to the page, and you get different effects every time. You get different effects every time. So I'm now just looking to see if there are any colours that I haven't used. Maybe this one. Oh, maybe that was this one down here, because I was thinking maybe not. Let me just use that up here. Yeah, so I'm alright with this as a, you know, this is a second layer. So first layer was the fabric itself to the page, and the second layer is the paint. And there is no right or wrong. There's just, you know, this is how I've done it for this particular moment in time. You know, or when you look at the technique itself, it was like, yeah, okay, so I can either add gesso to the page, or I can just do it and just apply the paint to the page. But you know that either way that you choose to do it, there's a knock-on effect. So if I choose not to add gesso to the page, the fabric will absorb much more of the, you know, the supply, the material, the paint, and you're gonna have to add more of the supply to the page. It's a deeper purple. Yeah, if I add gesso, then it sits on the page like it was a canvas that had already been pre-gessoed. So the canvases that you buy normally are pre-gessoed. Okay, so that's all I want you to do, is maybe add a couple of layers, and you know, if you want to go on, then you can. If you want to just stop there and then come back and then, you know, later add some journaling, then that's fine. So that's again your task for today in this video. And think about the senses, the word senses. Think about the listen to the podcast and see what else that brings up for you, and you know, then continue your journaling throughout the week. And I look forward to showing you the end result. I'll show you this at the beginning of next week's session, and yeah, I hope you have fun. And again, you know, don't feel that, I don't want you to feel that anything is right, I've got to do it this particular way. If you don't have fabric, or, you know, just not any old scrap fabric, but experiment. You might decide this week to experiment with the different fabrics that you have in order to see what the different types of textures, what you get when you apply paint or apply gesso. As I say, I've applied a clear gesso so you can still see the fabric underneath, and then I want to add the layer of writing on top. So I'm going to leave it there, take care for now, and do come on to the Patreon blog and see some of the other additional videos that I'm putting out there, some of the behind the scenes, and yeah, and just have fun. Essentially, just have fun. Take care for now, and I'll see you next week.